Welcome to Easy Vibes. On this podcast, we aim to have conversations with a wide variety of people from all over the world, from all walks of life. And I'm your host, Chico Moya. I had the absolute privilege of having a fascinating conversation with Conrad Molden. He's originally from the UK, but he made Denmark his home. And he's a comedian and he makes jokes about living in Denmark, about being an immigrant in Denmark, and also just about Danish culture. And it's really fascinating to see, and you can genuinely see how much he loves the Danish culture and all that sort of stuff. And we had an interesting conversation about comedy, about his view on immigration and everything else in between as these conversations go. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation, and let's get to it. One thing I found is that, I don't know, editing for me, I would say, I'm sure it's similar to you when you sit down to write a joke or something, right? Mm. And then once you put all the pieces together and then you're like, this just works perfectly. For me, video editing is similar. It's like painting a canvas or something. It's like, I love the idea of taking all these broken pieces of video and weaving them together into like a story that makes sense. I don't know.
It's really nice.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's like a video painting somehow.
Yeah, almost. Yes. In its own way. And plus, I think video is the future in terms of the way we communicate. I mean, most people get their news from watching stuff.
Especially even in the last 5-10 years.
Yeah.
It's really
when's the last time you read an article?
I know. But it sounds really bad, but it's also because I feel like increasing everything, like anything with depth is behind a paywall.
Oh, yeah.
And then you kind of enter this routine where you're like, I don't want to pay for a subscription and just get my news there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
It's kind of painful. But no, I agree. I will read books, but for news, I will browse news websites at best.
Right.
You know what I mean? How about you?
I watch a lot of YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't even want to see how many hours I spend watching videos. But I think YouTube for me, it's not escapism most of the time. I'm usually trying to learn stuff. Like when it comes to news, I like to watch alternative, like different sides of the coin. Like I might watch something that's really left-wing, like really, really left-wing.
Like really left-wing.
Yeah, and something that's ultra right-wing. But I guess, so then I do that and then I watch a bunch of stuff in between, usually. Because nowadays I realize the truth isn't, if you believe the truth just comes from one side, it's not. Like I've watched, so another thing I do is I watch a lot of debates about certain issues or whatever. I find that the best way to kind of watch stuff, because otherwise when you just listen to one person telling you something, like let's say they're analyzing a presidential speech or something. You can take the same video and watch two different people do a reaction to what they took out of it and get completely different points. So I don't trust anyone, to be honest. To be fair, I think comedians probably tell the most truth.
Yeah, that's the funny thing with comedy, right? Is that in a weird way, when we exaggerate it and we blow it up a little bit, the actual, like the real message underneath comes to the surface.
Yeah. Have you ever, I don't know, I find comedy to be probably one of the most difficult, it seems really difficult to get good at comedy.
Thank you. I do get you.
How do you not, I don't know, freeze up? How do you remember your jokes? Like, what is the process? Are you weaving a story in your head, or you just talking? Like,
I think it's maybe a little bit similar to the video editing, right? Like the real work happens before. You know, if I'm writing some material if I need to perform a show, the writing is where it has to begin.
Right.
So I need to have a thought about something. I need to document it. That's the first inception. Because you might have a funny thought, right? You might be walking down the street and think something, and then you're like, and it makes you chuckle, and then you don't, and you're like, oh, I'll remember that, and then it's gone forever.
Right, yeah, that's true.
You have to stop and you have to note it. And then there's taking all those notes and putting them down, and then I usually sit and try to look for themes, topics, try to somehow weave it together.
Right.
And then you start to create bits, and then the next level is actually performing that.
Right.
So I do a lot of open mics, where you go and it's open to the public, so anybody can perform. Crazy people can perform.
Right.
So anybody can be there, and then you get usually a little bit of time, less than 10 minutes, and then you go up there and then you try it. And then that's also really hard because sometimes
that sounds nerve-wracking.
It can. It definitely can be nerve-wracking depending on how confident you feel with the joke.
Right.
Because honestly, the hardest part is not even the being on the stage. It's when you have so much faith in your joke or your idea and people aren't laughing.
Oh, I know that.
It's heartbreaking.
I know that feeling.
And I have so many bits that I think are so funny or there's something in it, and I can't do them. I can't perform them. That's it. But then let's say it does get good and you get a piece that you like. Now you have your bit formed.
Right.
And you, at least for me, after I've performed it a few times and I know it's working, I'll put it in like a little bank. And then I know I have a paid show coming up. And then I will take all of those bits that work and then try to create a red thread. Because, storytelling is the key.
Right. So is it, when a joke works with a crowd, is it almost guaranteed it will work with a different crowd?
That's the funny thing. You would think so. You would. Sometimes that's honestly the hardest. Is sometimes you perform it for the crowd, and they really, really laugh, and you're like, great, that's perfect. And then the next time you're like, oh, I'll end on this because this is a great one, and then you might not get the same reaction. It's not necessarily that it bombs, but it's not getting the same laugh. And then you're actually trying to imitate the first time you perform it, rather than the joke.
Right.
So you're trying to get back to that. I don't know if you've ever had like a really good date, or you've been on holiday somewhere and you go back and you want it to be that thing that you did. So that can be a bit heartbreaking. But then you do eventually stumble on bits that are always working. And especially if you polish it, you sit with other comedians, talk about it. Make the punchline stronger and stronger, the tags stronger.
And what makes a punchline strong? Is it the delivery? Is it the story you weave around the punchline? Or is it, now that I'm trying to even describe it, I'm like, I guess it's all of those, right?
It's definitely all those elements, but I think that at its core, those things are kind of like the decoration on the cake.
Okay.
What you essentially need is a complete match between the feed line and the punchline. So the tension that you create in the feed line about whatever you're going to talk about has to be equivalent to the punchline. You know how it is, right? You're at the pub and your friend tells you a really long story, and at the end the punchline's kind of weak. Right?
Yeah, I know.
And then you think about that bit and you're like, if you had told me that in like 10-second feed line and then that punchline, I would have laughed.
Yeah.
Right? Even might have got a really big belly laugh.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you just need that balance. But honestly, under all comedy, everything that you see, if you zoom in, there is jokes. There is feed line, punchline jokes everywhere.
Right.
They can just be disguised and poetic and all kinds of things.
Is there any are there any comedians that you listen to quite often?
Oh, I listen to a lot of also on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's one thing I really like about YouTube is the transition that comedy is, like full specials are moving onto YouTube.
Right.
Some people are mad about that. I think it's great.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I was watching one of your videos about taking a bus.
Yeah.
And then taking, going into the bus from the back.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to pay.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And you said that you have to pay for it with your heart, basically. Yeah. That is so funny because that's the same thing in Finland because obviously now I just buy like a monthly bus ticket, but there has been times where you're like, you know what?
It's one stop, it's two stops.
I'm just gonna, but then you get in there and then your heart is beating, you're like, oh shit.
The rush. As you're looking, I've done that way too many times.
How did you end up in Denmark?
So back in, I finished school in something, I can't even remember when I was like end of being a teenager, and I did really badly at school.
Okay.
So I had very poor grades, and I didn't really know what to do. And I enrolled in a college where you didn't need any qualifications.
Okay.
So you can imagine the kind of people that went there. And that was terrible. And at this point, I'd kind of really lost a lot of hope in myself. I felt like all of my friends, like I had friends that went to Oxford and Cambridge and lived all their dreams. I was like, wait, hang on, we were all in the pub together. And how the hell did you manage that? And now you're in Cambridge. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like they somehow behind the scenes were actually studying.
Yeah.
Anyway, no. Be honest with your friends and tell them what you're really doing.
No, it's true, right? Oh, guys,
I
I didn't study last night. You're like, yeah, that's because you've been studying all year.
Exactly. You can't say stuff like that because I'll be like, I'll be fine. Because I sleepwalked I remember getting my grades. I did so badly in a government and politics course. I got a U. Right? That means a U.
Wait.
Yeah.
Is that...
I didn't know that was a grade. That means unclassified because the grade level is so low that it cannot be given a grade. You have not met the minimum criteria for them to grade the paper.
Holy shit.
That's how bad my grades were.
A U. I've never heard that one before.
It was new for me. I'm standing there like, what's this? And they're like,
do you know, that's quite impressive because... No, I mean, like, how many people have you met?
Yeah.
I've met many people who've gotten like, A+ and whatever. But a U, that's, hey, I'll take that on the chin and be like...
Did you get a U? Just lying to my mum. Yeah, it's higher than an A. It goes around.
Yeah, it goes around.
Yeah. Back. So I did very badly, and then I didn't know what to do. And my mum was really sweet, and she found this volunteering thing with the government. It was government private thingy, where you could go to India and do a lot of volunteering.
Okay.
So suddenly we went to India, and then I was like, okay, this is amazing, and this is also like a really, a big piece of what life is really like. What is it to be alive, right? I'm at home and I'm stressing about school and college, and then you see people living. It's not just about. You see a lot of poverty, but you also see a different way of life.
Yes.
We were in the rural Himalayas next to kind of where Pakistan and India and China meet.
Right.
So very, very, very rural.
Yeah.
And I came back with this new, fresh sense of like, I just want to explore the world, make the most of my opportunities. And then at this point, Denmark was offering free master's programs, and Brexit hadn't happened. It was called the good times before 2016 when everything went wrong. And and then I applied to a university in Aarhus, the second biggest city in Denmark, not expecting to get it because I had such terrible grades. And immediately I was snapped up.
Amazing.
And that's nothing to do with me. That's because Denmark gets money from the European Union for taking on international students. So they make a lot of money. So at that time, it was very easy to be an EU national and study in Denmark.
Right.
And that's what brought me to Aarhus. And then I was there for more than 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then now, since January in Copenhagen. It reminds me of your video where there's the two guys trying to like outdo each other.
Yeah, in terms of how long.
11 years.
Right. Yeah. Did you like it immediately, or was there a period of adjustment for you in terms of getting used to living here, the language, the people?
I mean, it was a bit of a mix. I was actually studying in Brighton before, the place that you didn't get to go, unfortunately. It's a great city. Yeah. But what was cool about that was it's a similar size to Aarhus, like around 300 to 500,000 people.
Okay.
So before I was living in London, whatever, 6 million plus.
Yeah.
So it wasn't such a huge step down to move to Aarhus. Aarhus is also a student city.
Right.
And I also met a lot of internationals because everybody on my course and the similar courses were international. So we just had a really good time.
That's
met a lot of cool people and we had a lot of fun, but we didn't necessarily integrate so much with the Danes. There were, there's kind of that barrier where the internationals did their thing and the Danes, they all know each other from nursery.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
They're like, oh, this is Anna's. I've known him. I breastfed from his mother. And you're like, who are these people?
I say the exact same thing. The amount of times I meet people in Finland and I'm like, oh, how do you guys know each other? Or like, oh yeah, we were born at the same time.
And you stayed in touch?
Like, how?
What?
What the hell? Okay, so then after staying, so what stopped you? So you never moved back to the UK?
No. Well, then I studied. And then at some point I was like, okay, I actually dragged out my thesis or whatever it's called, the paper you have, the one that no one reads. You know that thing you have to write at the end? Only you and one old man has to read?
Yeah, the whole thesis. I've never had to write one.
You never had to write one?
No.
Very lucky. It's honestly, the fact that you you're sitting over a computer, you're sweating, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you're crying, it's, no. When did you ever go to a public library and like, I'll read a random thesis from a master's program where the person got a C? Right? There are libraries full of these things. So I finished that, and then I really dragged that out. It was supposed to take 6 months. I think I took a year and a half.
Right.
To just drag that out, and then in the meantime, just having fun with friends.
How long was the thesis? Like, how many pages is there?
I think, it was not that long. Not long enough.
Like 2 pages.
Is this a summary? I honestly, the thing is, I haven't looked at that thing since I clicked the submit button because I was so embarrassed by it.
Really?
It was really bad. It was badly written. But the project was interesting, but the paper was rubbish. But anywho, then I was kind of dragging out. And then at some point I was like, I don't really have a reason to stay in Denmark. And I didn't really, the job that I had was delivering advertising to buildings.
Sounds exciting.
Oh yeah. If you love rain and getting paper cuts and being shouted at, it's the best job ever.
Really?
I was awful, yeah. It's actually a job for children. In Denmark, it's very common that little kids do it.
Oh, right.
So you drag a little trailer around to post these things. The pay is terrible. It was, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to leave. But just before I left, I saw a job posting at Aarhus University for a teaching position. I was not qualified.
Right.
And I thought, I'll just put in an application. And I put it in, and then I left by Flixbus from Aarhus to London.
Right.
It's more than 12 hours on 2 buses.
What's a Flixbus?
You know what it's this new technology where they've taken misery and they've turned it into a bus. It's really sad. It's really sad. It's like, it's so sad. It's like your seat is like this big.
Oh, no.
And it's like €2 to go to Hamburg or something. You know, it's that kind of thing.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And I had to, actually changed in Hamburg. Flixbus, the bus station in Hamburg is the sketchiest place in the whole world. And then went back to London. And literally the day after I got to London, I got an email that said, congratulations, you have this job.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Teaching what, though?
British history.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's when I thought my accent was probably the reason I got the job. Because they were like, you're actually British. Right? Like, who do we want? A qualified Danish person or this guy who sounds like he knows what he's talking about? So that was that. Then I moved back to Denmark and then I started teaching at the uni. And in the meantime, ever since I had been in Denmark, I've been doing stand-up. So, I started doing it at the end of 2012 when I moved. And at this point, it's 4 years later, I haven't made any money doing comedy, just doing it for fun.
Right.
And then after I moved back, I was doing a show and a guy came to me and said, I think we can do a tour with you because your material is kind of unique. Right? You're talking about Denmark, you've learned enough Danish, blah, 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 blah. So I said to him, that sounds great. That sounds like I'm going to go bankrupt. I don't want to do that. And then he was very sweet and said, I'll give you a flat fee for every show we do and I will pay for all the advertising and rental.
Oh.
And I was like, that sounds good.
Yeah,
and shook his hand, and then ended up kind of regretting it because the tour did very, very well. And he made, we made a lot of money. It was a lot of fun.
Oh.
And got to see the whole country and go to so many shows. And it was just great fun because we were not doing very big venues. Some venues were like less than 100 seats. Right. And then when it sold out, you could just do another one and another one. So there were some nights I was doing 4 or 5 shows in the same venue.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you just kind of started. Well, to be fair, you'd been doing a bit of stand-up for a while before you even.
Oh, not even a bit. I'd been performing 4 or 5 times every week for about 4 years. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we had a comedy club in Aarhus, and I even started an English comedy night. So I was performing also at the Danish ones. So I was doing it in English, and the other comedians were Danish. And then every Sunday we had international night. So I've been doing a lot of stand-up. And
That's awesome.
Some small paid gigs.
Right.
You know, very small things. I did, for example, the very first paid show I had was in a shopping mall. And it was at the entrance. And I stood on a wooden box and people sat in sun loungers. Because it was like a sea theme or beach theme.
Okay.
And they had a seagull soundtrack playing, but it was connected to the burglar alarm system, so they couldn't turn it off. So you're performing for like 6 people. And over literally, and you're like, Hello.
That didn't kill the vibe at all.
No, like, I'm Ginger.
Right.
Please listen to me.
But that's really interesting, because I find it so interesting that people will see someone being successful in whatever field and they're like, oh, that person got lucky. But once you dig in, you're like, wait, actually, the dude's been working freaking hard for a long time, right?
It's the classic with everything. People, if they discover you at a successful moment, they're like, wow, this dude came out of nowhere. You're like, no, I was at the open mic, you weren't laughing and didn't remember me. And you left, and then I got good. I was there.
That's hilarious. What would you say has been your, I'd say, a show that you remember that's been seared into your memory, whether it's good or bad?
Oh, okay. I can do one of each.
Okay, sure.
I mean, good. I have lots of good memories of shows, just ones where the audience was just on fire, and you're just having a really fun and exciting time. I did, for example, I did one at the opening of the current tour that I'm on in a theatre called Bremen Theatre. It's like 5 minutes from here.
Right.
And it's a really old, beautiful converted cinema. So it has all these, it's like a really old cinema, so it has all these tiers, what they call balconies.
Right.
And the stage is really beautiful, and everything is kind of wooden and red and velvet and gold, and it's very, very beautiful. And we sold out the tour very, very quickly, and it was just amazing to go on stage and perform this show so fresh. Like, I'd just written it, I'd performed at bits of it at open mics in stages, but I'd never done the whole show together. That was an amazing electric feeling. Bad shows. That's maybe 20% of what I do, because most of what I do is private shows for companies.
Right.
That's where I make my living. So, it could be, I did a show actually, we're in the Wake Up Hotel, and on the other side of the road, there's another hotel. I did a show there recently in a conference room. So companies will be having, it could be anything. It could be a dinner, it could be a conference. Who knows?
Really, that's a thing that people do. Like,
yeah.
I didn't know.
I didn't think it was at least in the UK, it's really not a thing. But in Denmark, it's very popular to have, like, if you pay for your company to do something, to have some form of entertainment. So I'll usually turn up and there will be me, and there might be a band, and there might be a DJ. And obviously food, catering, things
Fair
like
enough.
that.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is in Finland, but in Denmark, they really try to retain, it depends on the company obviously, but they try to retain staff and treat them.
Yeah.
So they might do sports activities.
Yeah, definitely depends on the company. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Like, if it's, some random little company, they're not going to be bothered. Or Flixbus, I'm sure they have done nothing for their drivers.
Now I'm quite intrigued. I'll probably overlay an image of the Flixbus.
Oh yeah.
In a section of this.
Oh, you should.
To find out what misery looks like. Right?
I have a joke where I used to say, if you look through the windows of If you look through the windows of a Flixbus, you would see more smiles on a death row lineup. Honestly, the faces of people. You can go to the Flix. It's not far from here, next to Central Station. It's so sad.
Really?
It's just sadness. It's people who can't afford the train, who are just like, oh,
Shit.
This is now the bottom. I don't have a car. It's too far to bike.
Damn. Before I get sidetracked. Oh yeah. So now your worst.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. There's a lot of them. The one I always go back to was actually quite early on in my kind of paid career. So I'd been doing comedy for about 4 years, and I had very specific material. I have a show called Danglish on YouTube, and in that it's very Denmark specific. Like, I have friends like non-Danish or people who have not really been in Denmark, and then it's like very specific to these things.
Right.
So I had this show that I was ready to perform, and then somebody contacted me and said, we're having a post-wedding party. Can you please come? And the money was quite good for me at the time. It was a couple of €100 or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'll be there. The day before, I contacted them and just said, I just need to know some more logistics and also about the audience. And they said, oh, no one is Danish. The bride is Mexican.
Oh God.
Yeah, and her family is flying in from Mexico. The husband is Swedish, and Denmark has very loose laws about getting married. So a lot of people come to Denmark to get married for legal reasons.
Oh, gosh.
Like EU and non-EU can get married here very, very easily. So that's why they're doing it in Denmark. None of the guests have ever been to Denmark.
Oh no!
Yeah, I think the groom had like visited once or something.
Oh
so
gosh!
I was like, okay, right. I arrived. It was I had to go to the train station in the middle of nowhere. Side note, the trains were or being repaired, so it was a bus. So it actually took me about 5.5 hours to get there.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so good start, right?
Oh, shit. Yeah.
I get there, I take a local bus to the middle of nowhere. It's like a summer house. Luckily, it's a really sunny day, only in Denmark that year. And outside there is, it's a big open area with lots of grass, and it's a very big house, and it has like even like saunas and steam rooms, and like it's a really fancy place.
Right.
Big, 2 huge families there.
Right.
And they also decide not to tell anybody that I'm going to perform. They're like, oh, this is like cousin Conrad, right? Yeah, to like make it more of a surprise. I'm such an idiot. I think this is a good idea. So I'm like, yeah. I know Rasmus or whatever. So I'm kind of hanging out. I get changed.
Sorry. Yeah.
I go to meet the groom, and he says, okay, everything's ready. There's no microphone.
Oh.
There's no stage. I'm in a garden. I'm on a patio.
No.
There are at least 100 people just kind of roam. People are just having a good time, right? Sunny, they're drinking. There are children. There's a baby in a pram next to me. There's one picnic bench in front of me and a huge garden. I mean, just colossal garden.
Right.
And then the guy's like, yeah, just, get on with it, right? Just do your thing.
Oh,
so
gosh.
I'm like, hey, I'm actually Conrad, the comedian. And everyone's like, we have no idea who you are.
Oh, gosh.
And then I start doing my show, and I really start sweating and stumbling. And then the baby starts crying in the pram.
No.
And honestly, man, it's like being an interstellar.
No.
Like time is grinding to a halt. Like every drop of sweat, every word is taking forever. I stagger and stumble my way through the show. There's a couple of kind adults who are like kind of, trying to get a mood going. Most people are just completely confused and disinterested. Most people can't hear me. It goes on and on and on and on. And then eventually I either run out, I can't even remember, either a run out of material or a timer rings in my pocket. Something happens that is like this, I can't do more. So I'm like, thank you, everybody. I go into the house, I go into the toilet, and I put my coat over my own head. And I'm sitting on the toilet just shaking, almost crying. This is awful. And then I'm like, okay, luckily the lady had already paid me. She'd been very sweet. She paid me even before I went in the building. So I have my money. I'm like, I've just got to go. I checked the travel app, just missed the bus. And I can't miss that last train from that train station because there's no more trains. So if I miss the train for the connection, I won't get back home. So I have to now go up to the bride and be like, I know that was awful. Can you please drive me for 40 minutes to a train station? And I get in the car with her, and we have the longest, quietest car journey.
Oh, no.
It's just the hum of them. You're just driving, and then like, is that the train? No, that wasn't it. Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That is rough.
It was really, really rough. And Danes are very honest, and they won't be like that. It's not like British people are like, that was amazing. It's not. They'll just use their silence. So she didn't say anything. And then when we got out of the car, she said something kind of ominous, which was like, well, I guess we might see you again. You could tell that she was really hoping not. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So those were the low times.
Man, I felt that in my gut because I know the feeling of knowing you fucking up. Knowing when you're describing how everything seems to slow down, it is the absolute worst. Because I do music as well, and I'd perform shows in like different bars and venues as well sometimes. But I learned very quickly to bring my own sound all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's been times where people are like, hey, come play at this place, we'll pay you. And I'm like, okay, cool. Should I bring my own sound? Because that will change the price a bit because I have to lug all of this. They're like, no, don't worry. We've got a mixer and speakers.
In a dusty old
and
cupboard.
Whatever. And I'm like, okay, great. I arrived there and the speaker's literally like a Bluetooth speaker. And the mixer is like a DJ mixer. And I'm just there like,
oh man, what is this gonna sound like?
I thought you had a freaking sound system. Yeah. And so ever since then, I always carry around like something. But I take it now you're at a level in your career where obviously you're performing in places where things are set up for you or things like that, right?
Yeah. Usually the way it works is we at larger venues, maybe 150 plus, and at those places you pay for rental. So you pay, I don't know, it depends on the size of the room, but you could pay upwards of, say, €3,000 for rental that day. And for that, you'll get a sound man or woman. You get, obviously, access to the system. You might get bar staff. You might get security staff, access to a ticketing system. Like, you're basically paying to rent that venue with all its facilities at that time.
Right.
So that makes things way, because you'll arrive and they'll, even if you're not coming earlier, they will still do a sound check for you.
Okay.
And stuff like that. And they'll have a sound man live who's checking your audio and a lighting technician and stuff.
Right.
It takes the pressure off.
Do you get recognized in the streets?
In around Denmark?
Yeah.
I do, yes, I do. Yeah.
Really?
I get stopped for, like selfies, people being very sweet. It's a bit funny in Denmark. Maybe it's the same with the kind of Nordic vibes, but I often feel like people are looking at me. But they won't say anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it could be because I'm ugly and ginger. But, it's so... I'm like, it's because I'm...
Look at me. Yeah.
I actually have a little joke about that, which is true, where I can't even remember, I went into a shop and I was speaking Danish, I was asking the lady for something, and I could see her smiling, almost laughing, and I was being a bit cocky, and I was like, have you seen me on television? And she looked a bit puzzled, and she's like, no, I'm laughing because your Danish is shit.
Oh, shit.
It was the best moment. It was like this massive wake-up call. I'm this arrogant dick walking around like, no, we're all staring because your trousers are open, because your hair looks awful.
I think someone said, I went to Stockholm and then I was talking to someone about the differences between like Danish, Swedish and Finnish people. And they were like, in terms of how introverted and extroverted people are, I'd say as a package, all of them, or I guess now I should say us, are pretty... a lot more reserved than like Americans or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the Finns are the most reserved.
No way! Oh my lord!
And then
wow.
And then the Swedes.
Yeah.
And then they call the Danes the extroverts of the...
Yes, some people call them the Latinos of Scandinavia because they're so flamboyant, Wow, the Finns are more reserved than the Swedes. So they must be at a total snail's pace. The stoicism.
No. Yeah, the Finns are... It's pretty difficult to describe because I find it really hard to separate myself because I've immersed myself into the culture and whatever. Not that I'm like blank-faced and stuff either.
Dead inside.
Yeah. No, it's more kind of like... I notice these things when I travel somewhere else. So, for example, when I arrived in Stockholm, I saw people talking quite loudly on the phone, like...
Look at the old man inside you.
Yeah, I mean, it was like people like chill to just come and sit next to me. I was like, the fuck, bro?
Sit 3 seats away on another bus.
No, but I kind of laughed at myself because I realized that, wow, Finns are really introverted because like I would never talk loudly on a phone. Like on a bus, like in general, like, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Yeah. Like I would, if I do speak, I'm like, hey, what's up? Yeah. Like I'll try and speak at normal volume.
Yeah. Wow. You're truly Finnish.
But then when I went to Stockholm, everyone was just like talking and like
smiling. People were outside. There were people standing next to each other.
Do you ever go and visit the UK?
Yes, I do. My mum and my sister and her children are there. So I do go back. I totally get you. You get culture shock. That's what's weird. You become so immersed in the place that you go back. I mean, my family lives in kind of a crappy bit of South London.
Right.
And it's complete and utter culture shock every time I go back.
In what way?
I mean, one is definitely diversity of people. You know, Denmark, even Copenhagen, everybody is white and blonde and this high and called Rasmus. Like, it's I mean, obviously that's an exaggeration. There is some level of diversity, but you go to London and it's just amazing. You can go down streets and everyone is Bangladeshi, right? Like, you know what I mean? Or like, especially where I come from in South London, like the borough. It's right next to where my mum lives, but that borough is predominantly black. So I went to school and like most people had Nigerian or Somali heritage.
Right.
So it's like that feeling is crazy in London, right? And you get like good food and fun activities and all that kind of exciting stuff. But then on top of that is also this feeling like people are rude and people are loud.
Oh, really?
And the streets are dirty.
Oh, God.
You know what I mean? It's really busy. It's really, really busy.
Yeah.
And people aren't going to move for you on the bus or in the street or that kind of thing. As the Danes, everyone is very, even I had to go to the doctor just before this. And my experience of going to a doctor is you go in, they deal with you, and then they get you out, right? Like you get the next, there's a waiting list. This lady's like chatting to me like I'm her grandson. How are you doing? Oh, lovely. What are you up to? And how was that? And you're like, it's really nice. The Danes have this term hygge for everything, right? Everything's like this kind of cozy feeling of loveliness. Yeah. But also part of me is that British mentality. I'm fucking, I'm going to be somewhere.
Yeah, I think, is it the phrase? I'm thinking, hygge? Yeah, where it's like...
Yeah, it's candles and coziness.
Yeah, of course.
Cup of coffee.
Because I feel like I've been spoiled living in Helsinki specifically because it's so clean. And I know people call Finnish people really introverted and all true. The fact that, people go out of the way to not have to talk to you if they don't have to, right?
Right.
But I've grown to appreciate it because the longer I've lived, the more I've understood that it's not that they don't want to speak to you. Well, there is that, but the driving force behind it is out of respect. It's out of a sense of, hey, I don't want to infringe in your conscious experience without your consent, basically. So it's like the reason why I won't sit so close to you is because, hey, you're a human being. You sitting there, you probably want to sit there. I'm not going to infringe upon you. The reason why I'm not talking so loudly, whatever, is because, hey, I've got my own headphones. I can listen to this myself. The whole world doesn't need to listen to this. That's the place it usually comes from. So I find it quite endearing in general, and it makes me feel comfortable and chill. Similar to that is like the streets are really clean, and in general, people, if you do speak to someone, they will be courteous and unless they're super drunk, then they can be assholes. But even then, a lot of the time, they're just more outgoing and more kind of chill. But then I went to visit Berlin, and because I'm originally from South Africa, and before I moved to Finland, I remember I always wanted to go to Berlin because it's like, it's artsy and I was that sort of dude, because nothing else I did in school seemed to scratch the itch I had. Like I tried to be a teacher, whatever. So I was like, Berlin, it's where I want to go. Ended up not going. Years later, after living in Finland, I go to Berlin. And the first thing I thought was, man, this place is dirty as fuck. And I know it's all like, oh yeah, we all like liberal and free, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, are there limits though? Like in terms of this place where I was staying at, this dude was kind enough to let me stay at his place, and inside his apartment was really nice. But outside, there was all this spray paint, this graffiti, and this weird, ugly ass skull, and and some people dig it. But I realized I was like, oh wow, living in Finland has really turned a few knobs inside of me. I'm more attuned to a certain type of environment now, and it's so strange to me, like when I got into the metro, when I first arrived here in Copenhagen, the metro was clean. People were sitting. I was like,
Yeah.
this is
my zen.
Yeah, this is nice, right?
Yeah.
And so hearing you describe London, a part of me is just like, fuck, I don't know that I want to experience like all these people. The fact that people actually don't give a shit about you when they come into the metro, they'll speak loudly, they'll fart loudly or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I could handle that anymore.
I do completely get you. It feels like I think Berlin especially is for like young, artsy. It's about clubbing and partying and having fun and these kind of things. So it fits that mentality. I do get you in that regard. I do feel that sometimes it's also with that you're kind of copying or mimicking what's occurring around you. So
true, that's also true.
Have you heard about the broken window theory?
No, I haven't.
So let's say there's an abandoned a building, right? And it's been, whatever, no one is using it inside. And somebody comes along and they throw a rock through the window is broken, right? Now, what will happen is that somebody might come along and do some graffiti there because they think this is a place where my graffiti will retain. And then if you're walking down the street, are you going to piss on the nice house or the smashed window graffiti building? And then it starts to perpetuate and people will dump rubbish there, right? Where am I going to throw away my garbage? The place where no one cares. And it starts to create that. And that's the thing when I walk around in Copenhagen is I wouldn't do it anyway, but I don't want to throw my rubbish on the floor.
Yeah, you're so right.
And I will seek out a bathroom, although Danes are not always good with that. Everyone's bad with that when they're drunk. But it's like this kind of mentality of kind of maintaining a situation. And that's for some reason why I can really dislike parts of London because, of course, there's poverty is relative, but parts of London are really run down. And you can feel on people and see on the buildings and see on what people's weight, what they wear, how they act, that no one is really caring or maintaining. I remember in 2011, I was working in Palestine at a job I was doing there. My mum rings me, she's like, turn on the news. I switch it on, it's BBC, and it's my road right where my mum lives. 5 cars are on fire. It's a helicopter view down.
Holy shit.
It zooms out. This was the 2011 England riots. It went on for almost a week. Every single day, people were burning and trashing and destroying the city.
Oh, God.
There was like a 3-story building next to where my mum lives. The ground floor is charity shop, right? For an association for like children with disabilities. Someone broke in there and set fire to it and the whole building burnt down.
Holy shit.
Devastating. Yeah, it was horrible to experience. My sister was living in the city, my mum was living there, and I would communicate with them about this and I just couldn't get it out of my head. Like people aren't going there to destroy London. They live there. And they're just trashing and ruining the place that they live.
That is really, I mean, this is where it kind of gets to, because I think that diversity is a beautiful thing. And especially diversity of thought, I think is a powerful thing. We definitely need that. But I guess the conclusions one might get is that diversity is beautiful so long as once you bring people into a country, that there is some sort of golden thread that links everyone together, whether it's the belief in the way you want a country to be run or whatever, like what holds everyone together. For certain countries, it's the language. For other countries, like America, I guess it's more the constitution and that sort of stuff. And I think that if you just try create diversity for the sake of it, without anything kind of binding people together, I think it can become a problem. Like, for example, and it's so awkward to talk about these sort of things because it can sound a bit strange. Like, for example, in Finland, the people who do really well in Finland, like immigrants or asylum seekers or whatever, the people who do really well are the people who come and try and immerse themselves in the culture and try and, I guess, they try and believe what the people around them believe, just like the whole broken window thing you're talking about. But this time it's kind of like in reverse. It's like, Finnish people are quite honest. I've lost my bags, laptop, phone, whatever, on the bus that might go through poorer areas or whatever, but all of that stuff always comes back to me.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It's, and because that happened to me, I know that if I found something, I would do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Not because I'm like, oh shit, but because I'm like, hey, I want to continue this sort of culture of like, hey, if someone loses something, it gets back to them. Same thing with, I guess, some of the other ways that Finnish people live. So I don't know. So I kind of feel like when people then come to a country, especially depending on, because people come from very different places on the planet, right? And I feel like it's really childish to not understand that there are some differences depending on where someone comes from. And some of those differences are relevant for those people in those countries, right? Like if you come from a war-torn place, you know, it is in your best interest to be suspicious of everyone, to try and, you know, not trust anyone, to, I don't know, take what you can get when you can get it or whatever. And if people like that come to a country and you don't create a nice process for them to be able to integrate into the culture that's there, I feel like then it causes issues. And I think it's very easy to put our heads in the sand and be like, oh no, you spoke about it, you're racist or whatever. It's like, hey, we can have these discussions and be like, yeah, actually, maybe we do need to work a little bit harder in trying to integrate people into our value systems, because obviously places like Denmark are doing something right.
Yes.
You know, obviously, because things are not getting blown up or burned here. So it's obviously pretty good. So maybe people who come here can try and take on some of those values. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
No, I do. I think that there is a plurality of thought, but there needs to be some principles that people can agree on.
Yes.
Ultimately, right?
Yeah.
It's like, Plato talked about the too many hands on the wheel.
Yes.
So as a society, right? Like if everybody's hand is on the steering wheel and everybody's pulling in different directions, the ship is going to crash.
Yeah.
So I know Plato wasn't the be-all and end-all of how politics should work, because it gets a bit authoritarian. But there is something to be said for having like a clear guideline as to how things should be.
Yeah.
You know, and with regard to the UK example, that's one thing that I feel like has been really lacking, is that, at least in my analysis of that generation and generation of people, they're not also people who are, born in Britain.
Yeah.
You know, I don't necessarily would argue that it was an immigrant issue. It was definitely a male issue. Vast majority of people involved in it were male, although that kind of just disappeared in the ether of thought.
Yeah.
But that was very, very prominent. But I think it's honestly down to the fact that those principles or values of what a society have just been dissolved, and what's been replaced is consumerism. It's like, what Reeboks do you have? What size is your plasma TV? Do you have the latest PlayStation, right? You know, all of this stuff has been forced upon these generations of people, and suddenly they begin to value themselves through material. So what happens, right?
Yeah.
They hit crisis, and what do? They steal things. What were people doing? Looting. Looting was widespread. And it was so funny that people made the observations of which shops weren't looted. Bookshops. For real. If you had a bookshop in London, you could leave the shutters open. Do you know what people were breaking into? Places, clothing outlets, electronics.
That's crazy.
All of that kind of stuff.
Funny thing is, if someone had to twist my brain where I would loot, I'd probably go to the bookstore.
I can imagine you browsing, right? You're not like doing this. You're just...
No, I wouldn't. I'd be like, this is a
good one.
Wow, that's kind of that's an interesting point about consumerism and stuff. But like, I still don't understand, what is the driving force behind someone who would convince themselves that, hey, I need to go and steal these shoes, or I need to loot this stuff. Do you think there's a sense of entitlement there as well? Like a sense of, because what makes you feel that, hey, I can go into the store and I can take that shit, right? Or is it because everyone else is doing it? Is it because I don't know what other examples I can give. I'm just curious as to like. Yeah.
Mob mentality is definitely part of it, right?
Yeah.
Because like you're mimicking the behavior around you. Of course, if there's a rush on a clothing store and there's already 100 people in there, and you'd be like, oh, and I'm wearing a mask or whatever, you'd be like, I can just go in there and steal some stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing is to think about the trigger. In the 2011 case, it unfortunately really mimics what you hear about all the time in the United States. There's a guy called Mark Duggan, black guy. There's a big question about whether or not he's like a good dad who's a member of the community or a drug dealer, right? Like so the media is projecting him one way or another. He's supposedly off to buy a gun, and the police are following him because he's been involved in a kind of drug trading network. And he flees from his car. They assume he has the gun. The police say that he fires his gun at the police. They shoot him.
Continue.
They shoot him in the back. He dies.
Oh shit!
And they can't recover the weapon. Immediately there are peaceful protests that say he has been killed, shot in the back, in broad daylight. This happens in the middle of the day in a park, in a public area. And then the big question comes out, okay, well, who is he? And actually the answer to that is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not he was the worst criminal of all time. He still has rights to justice, and you don't shoot an unarmed individual in the back.
What was his name? Oh.
Mark Duggan.
Oh, Mark Duggan, okay.
So I can't even remember, it's 48, 72 hours later, they suddenly find the gun at the crime scene. Oh, suddenly it appears. Just when the police exactly need this weapon to appear, it appears. Oh, we didn't look in this bush close enough. So supposedly they find this gun, and that riles up the public even more. Right. So there's this idea of you're now framing him to justify police action.
Right.
And then the protests become, it's racism in the police force. It's, communities not being understood, or, there is no justice, essentially. Right. And that then turns into the protests. And you kind of begin to understand, well, if the police are corrupt on a level where they don't obey law and order, then why should we? Can you imagine if the state is so horrifically corrupt that they will kill an innocent man in the street? Everything, the textbook is out the window. I will smash windows and I'll steal whatever I want because society doesn't care about me and I don't care about society. That's not my opinion.
Yeah.
But I can understand that this is the beginning of the mechanism, right? It's like, well, why should everybody peacefully protest and just let these police officers get away with this crime?
Right.
I mean, you see it, of course, with mimicked in, all the things that have happened, unfortunately, in the US, like George Floyd's death, for example.
Yeah.
Thank God that psycho went to prison. But there have been cases, you think about the LA riots.
Yeah.
Video footage of people beating Rodney King on the ground, and none of them get prosecuted.
Yeah.
And you can understand why the riots kick off.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite an interesting, because I'd love to, with that story, what was years later now, when people look back at it, have you had a chance to actually look into the story and see
the Duggan case?
Yeah, exactly what happened, or has that been ironed out? Because I know that sometimes with social media, you can get such mixed stories. Have you?
The official police report says the weapon was recovered and that he was a drug dealer and that he was involved in purchasing a gun, obviously illegally.
Yeah,
that's the official narrative on what occurred. In my mind, I honestly don't feel like any of that even really matters because of what happened. Even if he did have an illegal firearm, unless he was endangering the life of a policeman, you cannot shoot somebody, no matter who they are.
They didn't have a body cam or something?
Not at that time. This is 2011. It's a while ago.
Right.
It was 13 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of feel my view on some of these things has changed a little bit. So when I lived in South Africa is well known to have riots when they're unhappy with something. And they will burn shit, they will break stores and all these sort of things, because similarly, I think they would probably have even more of a right because the police is fucking corrupt. The whole government is corrupt in South Africa. It's insane. And during that time, I would genuinely understand. I'd be like, yes, this is the voice of the unheard. This is the way it happens, whatever. But as time has started to go on, I've began to realize that the detrimental effects that those things have, number one, on the community, on the people who are actually working fucking hard to get those things, the jobs that will be lost, the people who work in those areas, blah, 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 all those sort of things. And another thing I noticed is that there are methods to fight things like corruption in the police or whatever that don't involve just messing up someone else's life. And for me, it's kind of like the thing that, I guess when you kind of look at how governments work, you would have to believe that everyone is corrupt, that the government is corrupt. You would have to see the process from the top to the bottom and see it in every aspect of society and the policies that are being pushed for and all those sort of things. And if one cannot find clear connections, like right there in your face, then it means, even within a system, there can be some individuals that are fucked up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that the entire system is broken. If the entire system is broken, I don't think that countries like America or the UK or whatever would even be in a position it is right now. I mean, it would be like, sad to say, like South Africa right now, which is kind of fucked up in my opinion. But like, I don't know. I just kind of get the sense of like, we somehow need to find better ways to express anger and to, fucking hell, get into politics if you really want to, because it's too easy to burn a shop. Yeah. It's too easy to do that sort of shit. And plus, out of that, like, for example, in America, in some of the areas where they had the riots because of George Floyd, some of those areas have never recovered.
Yeah.
So some of those areas, big businesses have left,
Absolutely.
And BLM itself, that received millions of dollars, hasn't really put the money back into the community or any of those sort of things. So now, in retrospect, it's kind of like, okay, we know what happened was terrible and fucked up and whatever. But like, was that the right way to go about it?
Absolutely. And then you try to draw a line where it's like, when is this protesting and when is this just opportunism?
Yeah.
Because are those people breaking into stores and taking things? Of course, they can begin to try to justify it with, I can't afford this and I need this, or, I will never have a pay grade that will allow me to obtain these things. But is that about, George Floyd or Duggan? Is that even relevant to the discourse now? Because I do totally agree. I totally agree. I think that there's definitely a marked difference between going to the street and protesting, or even better, going into politics and changing from within.
Yep.
As opposed to going, the system is broken, everything is awful. There is an end to words, therefore I am violent.
Yep.
And what? What is going to occur next? Unless you're literally going to storm the capital of the United States, right? And kill and hang people, what the hell those guys were planning. Yeah. Unless you're literally going in. That is radical, violent change of government.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not okay, but you can see the motivation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to the whole Jan 6 thing, I find that whole thing so uninteresting. I haven't like, because I'm just like...
There better not be footage of you at the front.
Yeah. It's like,
I don't watch any of that.
I don't watch any of that. And I'm like, hang him. I'm just kind of like, whatever. I don't know. But like, but then for me, it's kind of like, in a lot of these countries where these people talk about the system being completely corrupt, are some of the best places you can be living.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's like, I can show you a government that is rotten through and through, right?
This is why I feel so guilty complaining anything about the UK, because it's like, I get it, there is places of poverty, and then you might look at how these people live and be like, have you seen the bottom billion? Have you seen the struggle? Of course, everything is relative. Like, who can describe pain or suffering? How can we compare these things? But there is a marked difference between I have clean water and I have shelter and I have access to food. Versus like, I have no home and infant mortality is skyrocketing. I have no access to medicine. My life is a lottery.
Exactly, and exactly right. And that's why I find it so strange that I think there are a lot of criticisms that people can levy towards countries in the West. There's a lot of shit, like I can go down the list with you, right? But it's also very true that some of these countries are the places where people are actually trying to
Yes,
right?
yeah, that's true.
It's
yeah.
like people are like, oh, racism, whatever. I'm like, okay, go to China and talk about racism.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to Iran and talk about being gay or whatever. Like, you know, and people have so much anger against the West. I'm like, I understand your anger, but bro, keep it consistent.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, at least here there is a pathway to make your grievances heard.
Yeah, and a consciousness about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so for me, I won't lie. A lot of the time, when I do, like if I turn on the TV and I see like, I don't know, the UK, people burn shit because
Sounds like a daily experience.
Yeah, they felt like someone was racist or whatever. I can't help but let out an exasperated sigh sometimes because I'm just like, listen, you had me when you were angry.
Yeah.
We can listen to you talk. You lost me the moment you started to take this isolated issue, at least because in general, at least from where I sit, I don't know, perhaps you can tell me, if a country is racist, we've got clear examples of what that looks like.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Within a country, there are some racist people. That's never gonna go away. Or homophobic, or I don't know, fat phobic, whatever. Like, there's a bunch of people who probably don't like you, right? But to say that a whole country is racist, that's quite a claim.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it has to be more than a video of one person getting killed. But even if it was multiple, you would have to step back and look at the statistics over time and see what it kind of looks like. And that's a similar thing with America so far as I've seen, is that when you actually look at, there was a time when you look at police brutality and all those sort of things, like there was a study that just came out. It was this, I forgot his name, he's a black economist, really like one of the best well-known, I forgot what his name is. And he was looking at the statistics in terms of police brutality. And he showed that in terms of police shootings of unarmed men or women, there's literally no difference between the different races.
No way.
And in fact, in certain aspects, there's like, for example, before George Floyd, like 3 years ago, I forgot his name, but there was a white dude who was killed in the exact same way as George Floyd.
Really?
A policeman had a knee on his shoulder and then he died that way.
Right.
No one gave a shit.
Wow.
No one even, I can't even remember his name.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, of course, because the media, the public consciousness is only going to be highlighting, let's say you have 100 deaths, right? But then 5 of them are against black individuals and it's very brutal.
Yep.
Those are going to rise to the top and we will start talking about.
Exactly.
And then another person dies and that adds to this collective consciousness. It's like currently everybody thinks that it's unsafe to fly in an aeroplane because of the Alaska Airlines. Right, and people are starting to question aircraft, and every time there's an air calamity, and then you look at the stats, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah,
if I flew in a plane if that was my only mode of transport, my chances of death fall through the floor compared to getting in a car.
Right?
Are you nuts? Do you know how dangerous it is to be in a tin box going 120 kilometers an hour? And who's around you? Idiots on their phones eating Big Mac. It's not trained pilots who are fined for looking at the ground.
Right.
Like if a pilot takes their eyes off the controls, right, that's their job.
No, I mean it's baffling to me when we do that, because it's and another thing, dude, I don't trust media.
You were at the front of January 6th.
like in terms of just digging into a story a little deeper. For example, what's a good example I can think of? There was a video going around of, I'll use unarmed police shooting or whatever again. I saw this video on Instagram and everywhere the news were talking about like this unarmed black guy who was shot by the police. And it was like a 13-second video or whatever, and it looks bad. Like the policeman just freaking unloads on this dude.
This US?
Yeah, the US.
Oh, US, okay.
And I was like, oh, well, damn. And then massive outrage, outcry, whatever. Months went by, and then the full video comes out. And the dude is clearly reaching for a fucking gun and trying to fight the policeman.
Yeah.
Until the policeman finally shoots him.
Yeah.
And then but that part of it, no one said anything. It was kind of just like.
So somebody clipped it at the point where they thought this is just enough to make people think a certain way.
Even mainstream, like CNN and all these places will play a short video of it. So nowadays, if I hear a story that makes everyone outrageous, I keep myself calm and I'm like, I will dig into it. I'll look into it. And some of the time, not all of the time, some of the time you realize, oh, the police actually shot him when he was getting in his car because there was a kid, 2 kids in the back that weren't his kids, and he was just about to drive off. And then when he was on the road, he was gonna cause even more harm and whatever. But then people just like, another black guy killed. I'm like, okay, what was the black guy doing though? Like, or the white guy or whatever. Like, you can't just take things in isolation and use it to confirm your biases already.
Absolutely not. But the problem is that there's a huge narrative, right? There's 2 backstories crashing into each other, and we zoom in and we take a snippet of a moment, and then we make that the story. But it's so hard, right? If you think about your own interactions with someone else, maybe you have a disagreement with someone else, there could be something you say that could be taken out of context. There could be a moment. And if somebody was there with a camera and they zoomed in or they cut exactly what you say at that moment, they can manipulate it. But the problem is to try to tell a huge story in any kind of manner that people will be aware of. I know that YouTube can be very good at long form, like talking about debates, all of that kind of stuff. It can exist. But for the masses, for people to pick up on instantly, it just doesn't exist. How can you tell these huge stories? That's what I sometimes hate about the news, when it will just say, even at the moment, there is the situation in Sudan. You know, you hear the news, it's like, situation in Sudan now even worse than ever. And you're like, what situation? You're acting like we've all been following this story. You haven't been talking about Sudan at all. And suddenly you expect that we are all tuned into this. And it really frustrates me because there are huge stories that haven't been told. And we look at that and we go, it's East Africa and it's poor. And the problem is it's poor and it's East Africa and they don't know what to do. And what it totally neglects is the interactions of a huge number of people.
Same thing with the Congo.
Exactly.
No one gives a shit.
No one gives a shit.
Yemen, there was maybe a little bit of hoorah for a little bit.
But people don't understand the conflict. I don't. I'm not saying I do.
I don't understand the conflict. I find it quite difficult. But it's hilarious. It's like imagine we were on another planet and going back to the 1940s and being like, oh, look what's happening in Europe right now, you know, and just going, yeah, those people in the middle of Europe, they're killing themselves, right? They're all bombing themselves. They're killing their own people. It just seems so bizarre. You know, it's like you're completely missing the point. You know? I think we function very well with easy narratives or narratives that can fit into our worldview. Take the Middle East, for example, when it comes to Israel, Palestine. People can easily be like, okay, good, bad, oppressed, boom.
Here's a timeline. Here's a timeline of the bad things.
Boom, there, that's it, done. And then that's how people expect all conflicts to appear. When you go to Yemen, though, now it's a little bit more complicated because now there's, all of them are kind of brown.
Yeah, where
so
is it?
Shit, like, damn, so I can't even be like, okay, those guys have a lighter shade.
It's like the same religion, but something is different.
Yeah.
But I don't really know what Islam is. So,
Right. Exactly.
you know?
And it's just kind of, and a classic example of that was how people like to put that narrative is when Hezbollah went into the Red Sea and started bombing, just
attacking ships.
attacking ships, right?
Yeah.
The same people were screaming about international law and screaming about all these other things. Suddenly, the Houthis, who routinely hang gay people and their people are starving, I think like 250,000 people have died or whatever, are suddenly now like, oh, they're the liberators. I'm like, what world are we living in here? It's like, as soon as something kind of fits our narrative, we like, this is...
It's exactly, it's the binary, the good and the bad.
Yeah, when the world is so grey, depressingly so sometimes.
Yeah, it's like the Danish sky. Talking of grey, should we grab a coffee?
Yes, please.
I have to go around 2, so about 40 minutes?
Yeah, that's completely all right.
Then I will grab a coffee and be back.
Yeah.
Would you want latte?
Yeah, latte is perfect.
Sure.
Thanks.
It's so nice to finally meet you, man.
Yeah, I know, same here.
I'm always secretly admiring your videos. I like the way you like to have your shirt off in a lot of your videos. Like,
you know,
oh no!
Oh wow, look at me. You know what the funny thing is? It's like, I think that, what was I gonna say? Fuck, I hate it when I was gonna say something and then it just disappears out of your mind. No.
It's about sit-ups.
What's that?
Is it about sit-ups?
Oh no. Actually, to be fair, because I stopped drinking alcohol.
Oh wow, how long ago? Please don't say yesterday.
No, like an hour ago.
Okay, that's fine.
No, I stopped drinking alcohol like, I'd say 6 months ago, maybe.
Wow, okay.
Has it been that long?
Is that like a permanent
For now, well, it is, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, the reason why I was mentioning that is because that generally had
Oh wow, really?
a whole effect on my body. And also this, I've been doing this thing called intermittent fasting.
Oh well.
Where I just don't eat breakfast, except today I ate breakfast.
Okay. So you skip breakfast but eat lunch and dinner?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
And it's good?
Yeah.
Good for you? Really?
It's-
What's all this breakfast is the most important meal of the day then?
Oh yeah, it's bullshit, yeah.
Made up by Kellogg's.
Yeah.
Serious?
And because a lot of these companies want to sell you things like cereals and things, which are actually not very good for you or kids or whatever.
No.
So, so far as I understand, it's a process called autophagy. It's basically called self-eating. Your body eats itself.
Wow, so you burn fat or what?
Yeah. So after a while not eating, your body turns inward and is like, what can we eat here?
Okay.
And then it starts eating fat. And then the longer it goes, then it starts going into some of the broken, unused cells in your gut, in your liver, heart, all these sort of things.
Wow.
And then that's because the human body, because these days we eat quite often, and because we can. There's food everywhere.
It's a river.
Right?
Yeah, it really is. Breakfast and snacks and lunch and snacks.
So, yeah, there's this whole thing about, when you eat, your insulin levels go up, and insulin basically stop. Am I tripping? Yeah, it makes it more difficult to lose weight and all these sort of things because your body becomes insulin resistant and whatever. So by just not eating breakfast, it's already, your body gets enough time to start self-eating over an extended period of time. For most of us, we fast for around 12 hours, all of us, when we sleep.
Okay, yep.
But now imagine if you finish eating at 7, and you can drink tea, coffee or whatever without milk usually.
Yeah.
And then you go to sleep, and then the morning you wake up, you drink some water, drink some coffee, some black coffee or whatever, and then you eat lunch.
Oh wow! And then how long is that? How long is the?
That's like 16 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and then that gives your body enough time to already start the process of starting to, because apparently a lot of diseases, if not most of them, are born out of this space of like, there's a lot of food and fats and whatever that are just chilling unused, and then the body doesn't know what to do with it. It's like putting stuff in a pantry, stocking it up, and then never using any of that stuff. So then I was just like, what if I just try this? So the way I did it is I didn't just stop eating breakfast. I just made breakfast later and later every day.
Oh yeah.
And then eating less carbs in the morning and more kind of like I'd rather eat eggs and bacon and cheese and that sort of stuff instead of just a ton of bread. Because that it makes the fasting easier the next day. Yeah. Because I don't know, it's something with how fats and carbs interact with your body. Yeah. Because carbs will spike your sugar levels and then bring it crashing down, and then you'll feel super hungry.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you eat a croissant, right?
Yeah, like which I did this morning.
You can have a cheat day.
And then, so that's what I kind of started doing, and I noticed like a real change in my body.
That's great.
And I was just like, wow, this is really cool. And so, that's probably the reason, part of the reason why I'm unashamed to walk.
Can't see him doing 7,000 bicycle crunches.
Oh, no ways. I do like push-ups and sit-ups.
Of course. But it's also
like 3 or 4 times, but not even a lot. Like I'll do like, 40 push-ups? No, wait. Yeah, I'll do like 40 push-ups and no, wait, how many do I actually do? 80.
Okay.
So I'll do like 10 of different types of push-up things, and then I'll do like not sit-ups, like doing things with legs. I don't even know how to do it, but I just keep it super simple and super easy. I'm not like a gym dude or whatever. I don't really give a shit. I just want to feel good in general.
It's funny what you say about food. My wife is Hungarian.
Okay.
So that's it's really wonderful to, like we were just in Hungary, for example, to go there and live, meet local. It sounds weird, but live with local people and experience that kind of lifestyle. It's just really funny when it comes to food, because in the UK it's very normal to eat your dinner late. So you're eating at 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. That's how I was brought up.
Yeah.
And you eat a big fucking heavy meal.
Yeah.
With mashed potatoes and meat and maybe some peas and stuff. And then you're going to bed within 90 minutes of having this huge dinner. And then it's strange because now we have children, and so our kids eat like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we eat with them, and then we will go to bed maybe at 10 or 11. So it might have been 5 or 6 hours since we actually ate. And I used to really find that hard, like the transition. And now I think it's great. It's actually quite nice to go to bed having sort of digested your dinner.
Yeah.
And it's also funny because in Hungary it's very normal that the last meal of the day is not the lightest, but it's compared to like lunch is a big cooked meal.
Yeah.
And in the evening you might just have bread with some things or a soup.
Yes.
And in the UK it's the opposite, right? Like you eat a banana in your car while you're driving to your third job.
Yeah.
While the buildings are burning around you. Or like a pre-made sandwich, which is just fat and sugars and preservatives that will expire in 2037.
Yeah.
And then for dinner, you'll have a huge meal. It's just really funny when you first go into a new experience, you can kind of find all the criticisms of it. You know, like, I'm really hungry in the evenings and we didn't have a lot for dinner. But now I kind of get it. It's like you discovering that the Finnish are not against you, they're respecting of you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of nice. You kind of get this you get the philosophy behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And it really helps. And I don't know, I guess linking a little bit to what you said before about consumerism and all that has also bled into food and into all that stuff. Like,
oh my, it's out of control. Energy drinks, man.
Oh yeah.
Why do
you drink energy drinks?
I mean, it sounds bad, but there will be times when I travel a lot for my job. So there'll be late nights where I know I have to drink caffeine because I will be driving until 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, God,
and normally I
yeah.
go to bed at 10 or 11.
Yeah.
On those days, but in general, if I don't need it, no. No,
Right.
no, absolutely not. And also tried to avoid sodas and...
Yeah.
I know, I also used to try to not drink caffeine. I've given up on that, unfortunately.
Hey, listen, you're still only human.
Yeah.
Like...
It's steps. Generally trying to, eat healthier and be more conscious, because when food is presented to you like in that consumeristic way of like, drink, it's blue and it's got all these magical things for your brain, and you're like, oh, and then what you realize is, no, I need water and vegetables and sleep.
Yep. Something that I've realized, like, especially with everything going on in the world, our leaders sometimes not making the best decisions. I realized that when it comes to life, no one actually knows what the fuck is going on.
No.
Like,
Everyone's guessing.
yeah, like, for example, let's say if I tell someone I don't really drink alcohol anymore, they will give me this bewildered look of like, there's something wrong with you or whatever. But I realized, I was like, well, actually, no one really knows.
No.
It all depends on what makes me feel good. You see, that's why if someone enjoys throwing back a couple beers, go for it. If that adds joy to your life, then you should do it. But we're all in charge. You get to that point where you realize you're the adult.
Yeah.
Where like, you're like, I need an adult to hold me. And then you're like, oh, fuck.
That's me.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we have to be an adult for ourselves, and people can make their own choices and whatever. But I just realized that so much of what society says is right and good and whatever, it can sometimes not be good for you.
There's a quote I love. It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society.
Oh, say that again.
It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. I think it's really nice. I often think about it in terms of, like, even if you think back in the Victorian era, right? The idea of being what we would consider to be overweight was health.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you were voluptuous. You were so wealthy that you could eat enough that you would put it on because you weren't toiling in a field. And now it's the reverse. If we're talking about mainstream media conceptions of health, I think it's so interesting that you think about homosexuality. People used to consider this thing as medical or mental illness.
Yeah.
Right? Like, these absurd notions that thankfully that we have transcended. But you consider, like, we are so naive to believe that that's not happening in our world now. Yeah. We're so deep into our own dogmas that what we believe now to be, history has not ended. Yeah, this is not the final. It's not like it's always 2024 forever. You know what I mean? We will change, and societies will evolve, and our notions about things will evolve. So we are somewhere in that place. We're just not aware of it.
What do you think? Because then it begs the question. What I would hope for humanity going forward is that no matter how much we change, hopefully there are certain values that kind of light the way as we move forward. Because
hopefully.
Like, because then, do you believe in transcendence, like a transcendent reality, or like a morality that supersedes us humans, or do you think that morality is crafted by the culture and that alone?
Wow. Okay. Small question.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kind of curious.
I think. It sounds like a cop-out. I think it's a mix, because I get it. There are cultural norms. There are ways that we think about things which are certainly culturally constructed. We can see that through history. However, there is definitely a difference between pleasure and suffering. And you see that everywhere, right?
Yes.
Like, we could, there's plants in here. If we remove sunlight from this plant's experience and we trap it in darkness, it will die.
Well, it lives in Denmark. It should accept.
It lives in the wake up in Denmark. So you can see why the leaves are wilting, and it probably is suicidal. But, so this is actually a very good example. It's like, I'm in Denmark, I'm inside the Wake Up Hotel. Can you imagine where this thing actually wants to be? It's like, hey, I'm probably from, like, Costa Rica or something.
Yeah, and it's chilling here. Like,
chilling. Existing.
Yeah, it's just existing here. Yeah, sorry.
But there's definitely something to be said. Like, there is a paradigm of different experiences that we can have, but I believe that every living organism can differentiate between suffering and pleasure, even on some kind of, maybe not on a singular cellular level, but on a very basic level. we can understand these two. And with regard to that, I believe that we can shape a society which maximizes I don't want to say pleasure, but like the non-suffering of organisms.
Right.
And to me, that makes sense, because that is a tangible reality that everything is tapping into. Also, even in our conscious space, right? It's interesting you talked about, news information and a balance in storytelling.
Yeah.
Because when you think about information like food, it's the same, right?
Yep.
If you only ever ate, if you were like, okay, I don't know, oranges are good for me, right? It's full of vitamins and stuff, and you only ate oranges, eventually you would die. And it's the same with news information. If you only hear the same point of view, if you only feed your head, listen to the White Rabbit song.
The White Rabbit song?
You know that by Jefferson Airplane? About Alice in Wonderland?
Oh,
Feed your head. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, essentially, I mean, she was on mushrooms when she wrote that song, but the whole idea is that...
I've never done mushrooms.
Have you not?
No.
We have to get you to Christiania.
It's one of the... Sorry to divert the conversation quickly, but I was just saying, it's something I've been paying attention to, especially with some of the clinical trials that are being done with some of these things. I find it exceedingly interesting because of the effects that it could have. Have you done it before?
Yes, I have tried magic mushrooms.
Really?
Yeah. I'm just worried that if you took them, that you would literally levitate, turn into a beam of light, go into a star, and then the universe ends? I don't know what the next... Can you imagine that? You just rise into the sky and they're like, what the...
Because I think that, because the pharmaceutical drugs being given to people battling with depression and stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, of course, they have their place for now because we don't have anything better. Well, supposedly. And hearing people talk about the effect that it has on them when they take some of these things, about feeling numb and whatever. And for some people, feeling numb is a lot better than feeling trash. But hearing about how some of these drugs are able to kind of break the pattern of thinking that you're bound in, and allows you that little space to be able to readjust and to see things in a different lens, I find that so interesting. What was your experience like?
I mean, I've tried a few different psychedelic drugs.
Okay.
I mean, what I appreciate about magic mushrooms, it sounds weird, but there's a very organic sensation to them.
Okay.
So there's a very kind of, I feel like it's not the same as taking a chemical drug. You have this feeling of sort of earthly connection.
Yeah.
And what's also nice about magic mushrooms is that you can, if you are worried about your situation, you can often intake something like a soda. If you drink a lot of sugar or eat a lot of food, it will actually downplay what's occurring to you. Yeah. There's a kind of like a get out of jail free card.
Really?
Yeah, because in order for magic mushrooms to be effective, you should eat them on an empty stomach. So you need to wait, I can't remember, it's been years, but you need to wait a certain amount of time and then consume them. The taste is very unpleasant. And then because that's the only thing sitting in your stomach is able to absorb the psilocybin.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, it gets annoying in your stomach, it's happening in your intestines.
I've always been afraid because I'm like, then I'm caught up in this, I'm talking to dragons and shit, and I'm not able to get out of it.
Yeah, you could just have something with you. You can read about it online. So I think it's something to do with starch or carbs or something, and you can really dull down the effects. I learned that the hard way. I was having a really good time one time and was with some friends on a beach, and I wanted to go. I went into a supermarket because I was just, I just thought it was hilarious that money is such a weird concept. So I had like some coins, and it was like going back into the olden days, when you would give somebody like, here's a half tuppence, and and they give you like a bag of grapes or something.
Right.
And I went in there and I think there was just like a thing of soda cans next to it. So I was like, whatever, I'll just buy one of these and I will just buy this. And I handed her the money and she paid me the change, and the change didn't mean anything.
Right.
It's like, 7 blugluckles, and then I went outside and it was really trippy. I looked at the sky and all the clouds in the sky it was tessellating. So it was the same cloud again and again, but they were splitting and multiplying.
Holy shit.
But everything else was normal, so the sky was
So
just
you
moving.
were seeing that?
Yeah, and with real intense clarity, like you could look into the cloud and you could see where it would split and where the shapes would reoccur.
And did you know you were tripping?
Yes.
Okay.
At that time, but I was also with some friends. We'd all taken it at that time. So sometimes, it depends on the situation. You can become, tripping so hard that you might forget what's occurring or what's happening.
Right.
But at that time, we knew, and we also were kind of reminding each other, laughing along with each other. But anyway, so I got to the beach and I had this, and it's weird because I felt like an alien on Earth. And I had this can and I cracked it open and was like, everything about this was exciting and new, and the textures. And then I took a sip of this thing, and then immediately this trip started to dull down.
No.
And then it kind of hit me and I was like, oh my God, you're not supposed to drink or eat stuff. And then everybody else was like, Conrad,
Oh,
you silly salmon. But I'd had it was not like it was totally over, it was still residual. But after that, it really came down, but maybe that was a good thing. But right up, it had been hours at that point.
I think I remember watching or reading a story about Ozzy Osbourne. I know it's not in the same realm as what we're talking about, but his reason for quitting taking acid was he said that this one time he was high, and in his stumbling kind of way of talking, he was like, yeah, and this one time I got so high and I went to go speak to this horse.
Okay.
And he's like, I was talking to this horse for a while, and then the horse told me to fuck off.
Okay.
And then he said, and then from there I stopped taking.
That's amazing. That is quite a good sign, though.
If even a horse tells you.
Especially if you feel like you're really, having telepathy with the horse. Like, we are one. And it's like, can you bugger off?
So you say you've got some shows at the moment. Mm-hmm. What is the show called, and where's it going to be?
So the name of the tour is the 3 Danish Letters. So I think they also have them in Sweden, but they have different different letter symbol. I don't know what you call it. But the 3 Danish letters that I've always found funny and have always been a big part of my life in Denmark are the letters A, U, and O.
Right.
So these are the 3 Danish letters that make up a lot of the very Danish-sounding words.
Right.
And the first letter is the A and the E mushed together. And you'll see it around.
Right.
So it's 2 letters smushed together. But and the reason I called the show that is because right at the beginning when I started the English comedy mics, I made a poster which said, are you tired of the E-U-O? Then come to the English comedy. And people found that very funny, and a lot of people can relate to it because people can't even pronounce them. They don't even know what they are, but they know they're Danish.
Yeah.
So I just decided to call that the title of the show, and then I ended up writing a joke about letters in languages. And part of the show is talking about that, and it has a joke about those letters.
Count to 5 in Danish.
1, 2, 3, 4 og 5. It's very similar to Swedish, and it's all Latin languages.
Sounds a little bit dainty. And
right? It's like, I always feel like it's like German, but told by like a little schoolgirl. That's what Danish is.
Yeah, because to be honest, I'm trying to think. Because when I arrived here, I was trying to read some of the Danish words. I saw exit. It was the word exit, but in Danish or whatever. Yeah, when I was trying to read some of those, it sounded like I was talking like an orc from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I'm like, ungalang, I'm like, God damn.
Yeah. You do feel like you're in like medieval times or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in Finnish it's like, uksi kaksi kolme neljä viisi.
Yeah, and I love it. In your videos, you always seem like you're summoning some evil spirits.
It sounds really funny. Do you know anything about Icelandic?
Icelandic? I've visited Iceland.
Right.
But I know that, as I understand it, like language-wise, it's a more kind of prehistoric Scandinavian language, right? Because the Vikings, as I understand, the Vikings settled Iceland and then kind of never left. So they are the little Viking enclave that's more Viking than everybody else.
Right.
As I understand. It's got something to do with Faroese.
Right. And what about Hungarian? Because that sounds kind of strange.
That is a really interesting one because it's the only non-Indo-European language. So all the others, like the Slav, I'm no expert on languages, but Slavic languages have something in similar. Like if you go to Czech Republic and you go to Poland, you will see similarities, even in the Baltic regions.
Yeah.
And then of course there are the Germanic languages and all of these kind of things. And then there's Hungarian. And basically the idea was that the Mongol tribes traveled from Mongolia through what is modern day Turkey and settled. And then Hungary shrunk after the First World War.
Yes.
And now it's this kind of blob of complete bananas language in the middle of Europe. It has absolutely, and I mean nothing to do with any other language in Europe.
Really?
People claim that the closest is Finnish. That's what they claim. But then I talk to my wife and other Hungarians, and they say their argument is maybe you can find 2% closeness with Turkish.
Really?
Some words in Turkish will be the same with a different spelling. Yeah.
If there was one language I could gift you with the knowledge to be able to speak fluently, what would you choose?
I mean, one that comes to my mind is Spanish, because you would have so much freedom of travel.
Oh yeah, then you can go to a lot of places.
Central South America would be incredibly useful. And I mean, obviously, places in Europe as well. And then you hopefully would be able to learn Portuguese. Probably Spanish. I love Spain.
Yeah, I mean, if you know how to speak Spanish, it's only one step to trying to figure out like French and some of these other languages, right?
Yeah.
I've never been to. Have you traveled to South America?
Yeah, I've been to Brazil and Panama.
What was that like?
Panama I loved. I mean, it's two different trips. Panama I really, really enjoyed it. I did that, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
Brazil I had not the best experience, but it's also because I made the terrible mistake of seeing cities.
Oh.
And I think, and retrospectively, what Brazil is all about is the nature. And like I went to Salvador in the north, and I went to Rio, and I went to Sao Paulo.
Oh, okay.
Rio was amazing.
Yeah.
Salvador was exciting, has a very different feel. Sao Paulo was one of the worst places I've ever been in my whole life.
Really?
I mean, I feel so sorry for that city. It has either the tallest building in Brazil or all of South America, whatever. It's a big skyscraper in the middle of the city, completely abandoned. All the windows are smashed and it's just full of homeless people.
What?
And that's kind of the monument in the middle. And all around it are these beautiful fountains, like really elaborate fountains that were built by one of the horrific dictators. And all the water has been drained because the city is so poor it can't pump it. So you're kind of living in this kind of run-down relic of what it used to be. Was really, really sketchy. At one point we were doing a guided, like free walking tour thing, and a guy only wearing Speedos and holding a balloon, who was definitely on PCP, came over to us and was very aggressive. And the guide was so scared that he took all of us into like a coffee shop. And that was like the version of us seeing like Big Ben, you know?
Holy
like we were
crap.
in the middle of the city, in the touristy area.
That's kind of wild to me because like a country like Brazil seems to have so many resources to be able to, I don't know, because I've been trying to learn history and trying to understand a little bit of what's happening around the world and stuff. But it's like, it's a mixture of a whole bunch of things, the past, current corruption, and all these sort of things. For me, I won't lie, having been born, I was born in the DRC.
Wow.
Yeah, and we arrived in South Africa when I was like 2 years old.
Are both your parents from DRC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I grew up in South Africa most of my life. So my life in general was seeing poverty and seeing racial tensions and seeing real corrupt policemen and all this sort of shit, right? And I grew up kind of poor. So for me, it's like the equivalent of, you know, I always like to joke, in South Africa, even some white friends that I had, they would be like, hey, let's go camping and sleep out on the street somewhere, like in the forest somewhere. I was like, bro, that is like my life. You're just visiting. You're taking a little peek into, like, oh, you mean go out and eat subpar food and be a little cold when you sleep? That's not what I'm looking to do. You know what I mean? So then like, and it's really funny. So when I come to places like Finland and people are like, oh yeah, I went to go stay in Swaziland for 6 months or whatever. I'm just like, you're visiting.
Yeah.
You're taking a peek and there is something deep inside of you that knows that you can leave whenever you want, so that you can let things go. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's good to be able to travel and to do these sort of things. But there is a difference of like, oh wow, I went to go live. I was walking barefoot. A lot of the time, I'm like,
and you were on safari and you had expendable income.
Yeah, exactly.
And someone was taking care of you, and
and all this to say, that's why a lot of the time I'm not going out of my way to go visit like poorer countries right now. Like, of course, there's certain places I definitely want to go, like Botswana. I want to check it out, and a few other places. But in general, I'm kind of like, yo, I've seen the poverty, and I know what it's like to have stuff stolen or whatever. I understand. I'm not throwing those things down or whatever. I'm not being negative about it. But at the same time, I'm like, I want to check out some different places. Like, Brazil is very similar to South Africa in terms of the crime rates and all these sort of things. So right now there's nothing inside of me that's like, I want to go to Brazil. Like, I don't have that desire really. And I was I don't know, I was kind of being a bit introspective about it. I was like, is it wrong that I don't want to go check out some of these places? And I'm, no, it's fine. I'll check out a lot of the other European countries for now. Like, I want to go to Oslo next. Check that out.
Yeah.
And then maybe, I don't know, have you been to any Asian countries?
I've been to China, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. That might be it for Asia. Yeah.
What was China like?
China was an experience. Was not my. Sorry, I just checked that you're. Yes, it's all good.
Yeah.
Was not my cup of Darjeeling.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, we visited the Great Wall. That was amazing. The Great Wall was incredible. And some of the sites are very beautiful. But Beijing was not a huge fan. But I know people. It's also really anecdotal because I've heard people go to Shanghai and have an amazing time.
Yeah.
So it's really anecdotal. But everybody I've talked to who's gone to Beijing, I think there are things to see, and then there's the city.
Yeah.
Went to Tiananmen Square. It's the classic. Like, you couldn't from here to the reception, you can't see beyond. I mean, there's just a smog everywhere all the time. The pollution is absolutely out of control.
Really?
You can taste it. You can see it when you wash in the shower. It's just sticky and hot and dirty. It's so dirty. I think Beijing is one of the poorest air qualities in the world. It's really bad. And it's it's obviously Asian culture, but it's the kind of thing where you go into restaurants and there are people asleep at tables because they work so hard. Like, it's their lunch break and they I need to power nap. And the people do that, they'll lie down and sleep 40 minutes and go back to work or whatever. Yeah, you see another side of life, and people are working incredibly hard. And also the amount of sort of spitting.
Yeah, I heard about that.
In restaurants, and they have a metal bowl on the table. People just and the hacking and the spitting on the street.
Fuck.
Yeah, it's very. The one thing I will say for China that I've been to, I've also I worked in Bangladesh. I guess that counts as Asia, South Asia.
Yeah.
And India. What I find a little bit, I love India so much, but it can be hard. You walk around, everyone's looking at you.
Yeah.
Because you don't look Indian. In China, they don't care. They don't care that you're white. Not really. I mean, if you go outside of the cities, probably to some provincial places, I'm sure there's more. But I mean, in Bangladesh, in India, everywhere I went, I mean, I also look like this.
Yeah.
But there's just a swarm of 20 people constantly walking around with you.
Really?
Of course, yeah. They're just so excited that you're there. And there'll be one guy who speaks like very good English, and he will like relay everything you're saying to everybody. And you're like, I am not that exciting. There's a picture of me on a beach in Bangladesh where I cannot see the sea. I'm on a sun lounger and I can't see the sea because there's literally a wall of people.
Really?
Just staring for photos.
That's great. I mean, I've been seeing some, because I have heard different views of places like China, for example, or whatever. But I know in certain places, I think it was Bangladesh or was it India, can't remember, but like this lady's literally sitting on the beach, and these older gentlemen are, and she's wearing like a bikini, like laying, and then these dudes are literally grabbing her to take the picture, and then she's like, no, I don't want that, and then they each taking turns, like kind of like, you know, it was like, god damn.
I've been on a beach with, she was actually wearing a bikini but wearing the sarong over the top, but people, like guys, were just out of control.
Really?
I mean, just the fact that you can see the amount of, you know, Bangladesh is a very, very Muslim country, and you will see women in the full hijab going in the sea, wearing it in the sea. And then that's how they will come out. And they will just be completely soaking wet, and obviously incredibly sandy as well. And then that's how they will be for the rest of the afternoon, because they just cannot uncover themselves.
God.
Yeah, very intense, yeah. It's a whole different world, totally. And I totally get why mentalities change, because it's like, if I went to I went to an all-boys school in London, and that even changed my perception of women at that time.
Yeah.
Women were like this amazing, exotic animal.
Right.
Yeah.
It was I went to an all-boys school too.
Yeah, you know the feeling.
Durban High School. Yeah.
Then you get this sense of like, it's like seeing a rare bird in the wild.
Yeah.
How do I talk to them? They're fucking humans. They're the same. It's the same thing. But because you're not exposed to them.
Well, you know what, Conrad? At least you don't have to deal with things like Tinder.
Talking of, this gentleman, are you single at the moment?
Yes, I am.
Free, single, and ready to mingle. You can find all the details at the link below.
But I find it quite exhausting, actually. Mm-hmm. And now I'm just more focused on trying to build a podcast and trying to just do my shit, because it's just...
Too many babes.
No, it's just... You kind of have to... If you start dating someone, and you're married, so you understand this, you're literally giving the keys to your heart to someone else. Yeah. They have the power to ruin your day with just a word.
Yeah.
And I've had the unfortunate displeasure of handing those keys off to someone who obviously doesn't care. And then it makes you kind of wary about that. You're like,
No, I joke, but I do understand you. There's actually a really good Bob Marley quote where he says to let somebody open their heart up to you, like you're going to love them, but you don't, is the most cowardly thing that you can do.
True.
Which is really true, right? Because you're really instilling a sense of trust and vulnerability with somebody, probably to get them to sleep with you.
Yep.
And then there's no actual substance behind it.
And dudes will say anything to just get a little bit of...
Of course. I know.
Just quickly, and then I guess we'll close up.
Yes, I will check the time. Yes. Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Timing.
Perfect. I was just going to just say, what did I want to ask? I guess I just wanted to ask, like, what is the what's the future looking like for you? Like, what are you, with what you're doing and all that sort of stuff? Are you still going to be living in Denmark and like doing comedy? What's up?
So currently I'm doing this tour only inside Denmark until June. But after that, I will start testing for a new show, which will be a little bit different, and we'll go around Europe. So we have, I want to say, between 5 and 7 dates.
Okay.
Unfortunately, not in Finland, but maybe we'll add Helsinki. But right now in Stockholm, in Oslo, Rotterdam, Berlin, Paris, London.
I'd love to come to one of your shows.
You'd be very welcome.
Like, I'll see... Depending on where it is, I'd love to come and check it out.
We might also add dates, but right now that's what the makeup is.
Right.
And it's more of a kind of idea of, okay, can I create a show that is fun and accessible for, obviously it will talk about Denmark and it might even talk about UK or other countries, but I want it to be a place where people coming from all different backgrounds can come and understand something, which I think is very special. There's a really good Icelandic comedian called Ari Eljan.
Okay.
He has a Netflix special called Pardon My Icelandic. I met him years ago before he blew up. He's very, very funny, and what he does he talks a lot about Finland, actually.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, you should watch the special. He's traveled all over Europe. Very, very funny. And what's so amazing is that even if you haven't been, to, Finland or Iceland or wherever, you can watch that show and you can really find it funny. And that's what I want to be inspired by, is this idea of create like a cultural mashup show. So the show is called A UK Man in the EU.
Right.
So it's about a British perspective, or at least a kind of weird non-EU perspective on the European Union and the countries inside. Even though UK and Norway are in there, I know they're not in the EU.
Right. Yeah.
But there is no blanket term that captures. But
guys, Conrad was here before he got his Netflix special.
Exactly.
It
looks like a YouTube video with Netflix in a different font in the corner, but it is a Netflix special.
yeah. But anyway, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you coming to the lobby of this hotel.
Thank you.
With this.
We're going to take this one with us.
It's painful, fine. But thank you so much. I guess that is the end of the podcast.
As they say in Denmark, tak for a day, which means thank you for today.
Tak for a day.
Tak for a day.
Merci beaucoup.